Chapter 1 Su Yang. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Two figures sat on the highest point of the eternal retribution cliff, one old man and the other a handsome young man with otherworldly features. The old man emitted an ancient aura that caused the surrounding space to twist and turn, and the young man casually sat beside him, looking as though the heavy atmosphere did not bother him at all. Young man, what crimes have you committed to get yourself stuck in this gloomy place? You do not look like someone who belongs here. The old man asked the young man, his gaze filled with interest as he looked at the young man, who was surrounded by a noble aura that calmed the space surrounding him. The young man showed a slight smile. I have done many things, one such as devouring the forbidden fruit created by His Majesty, the Heavenly Emperor, he said in a calm voice. The old man lifted his brows in surprise, and his gaze flickered with shock as he looked at the young man. You. Unsure of what to say, the old man stuttered non-stop. To be shocked speechless, this was a first even for someone as ancient as him, not to mention his wide eyes that hadn't been this wide for countless years. I'm more surprised that you are still alive after all that than what you've done. The young man only smiled at his words. Suddenly, the old man burst out laughing. I can already imagine the raging face of the Heavenly Emperor when he first heard the news. Ahahaha. Young man, I have taken a liking to you. What is your name? The ancient aura surrounding the old man had long disappeared. He looked and acted more like a kind grandpa than anything now. The name's Su Yang, said the young man. Then Su Yang. Would you like to leave this place? The old man suddenly grinned, showing his 2 rows of yellow teeth. Su Yang turned to look at the old man's face for the first time. It was filled with wrinkles, almost like a dried-up fruit. However, despite his ghost-like face, his eyes were as clear as water, and they shone brighter than the brightest stars in this eternal night sky. What's the point? Su Yang said a moment later. Even if I can leave this place, it will only trigger the Heavenly Emperor's anger even further. I think I prefer sitting here until my soul rots away than having to constantly deal with the Heavenly Emperor's wrath. What if I say that you can leave and not have to worry about the Heavenly Emperor? The old man kept the grin on his face, but deep in his gaze flickered a profound light. Then what? What should I do after leaving? Continue living the sinful life that I have been living for the past thousands of years? Or take revenge on those who wrongly accused me? That is up to you. Su Yang suddenly reached his hands towards the night sky and made a grasping motion, almost as if he wished to grab a hold of the stars shining above. Then, if I one day decide to leave this place, I will. He suddenly stopped talking and smiled. Forget it. I think I'd still rather be lazy in this place until I die. The old man suddenly started laughing again. You are still too young to completely hide your desire from this ancient one, young one. Even if you stay here for all eternity, can you really die from old age? An immortal such as yourself. He. Your wish. I shall grant it. He suddenly stood up and waved his sleeves, and the night sky that hadn't changed since the creation of this eternal retribution cliff suddenly turned to day, bewildering every soul that dwelled there. You. Who are you? Su Yang stared at the grinning old man with wide eyes. The old man said. Just an old man with nothing better to do. Right. Before I send you away, I'd like to thank you for what you did. Thank me. What do you mean by the? Before Su Yang could ask the old man why he was being thanked, a bright white light suddenly engulfed the world, taking away his vision. Envy. Immediately after getting blinded by the white light, Su Yang felt a sharp pain near his heart, like he had just been stabbed by a sword. He snapped his eyes wide open to see a handsome young man with a vicious grin on his face, standing in front of him on a wide stage, and in his grasp was a steel sword. Che. I narrowly missed his heart, mumbled the handsome young man. Su Yang looked down to see a sword penetrating his body, and he instantly became alert. Scram! Within Su Yang's body suddenly exploded an overwhelming aura filled with killing intent, causing the handsome young man before him and the dozens of people surrounding their stage to cough up a mouthful of blood. And because the handsome young man was standing so close to Su Yang, he directly fell unconscious after coughing up blood. The place instantly turned dead silent, and Su Yang pulled out the sword that was still stuck in his chest, ignoring the pain. After taking the sword out of his chest, Su Yang took this moment to quickly search through his memories. In his memories, he found out that he was inside the body of a young cultivator with the same name as his, Su Yang, and that he has the exact same looks as his younger self. However, the similarities stopped there and everything else was different. His cultivation base was near non-existent when compared to his old cultivation base, and he is currently a disciple in this profound blossom sect, a sect that heavily focuses on dual cultivation, where two people of the opposite gender indulge in sexual practices for cultivation. It is almost as if he had traveled back in time to when he was just a young boy who had recently started cultivating. As for how he got into this situation, that Su Yang before him had gone to court a female disciple named Xing Xing and ended up offending her current partner, Yan Ming, the now unconscious handsome young man before him, which resulted in a death match between them. What in the name of heavens is happening? Su Yang suddenly recalled how the old man in the Eternal Retribution Cliff had said that he will help him leave the place. Did he send me back in time? No. I don't recall ever becoming a disciple of this profound blossom sect. Then, in the midst of Su Yang's thoughts, a loud shout suddenly broke the silence. Everybody halt your movements. A middle-aged man jumped onto the stage and looked at Su Yang and the unconscious Yan Ming with a frown. Who authorized the two of you to have a death match today? Scram before I call for the disciplinary squad. Yes, Elder Sunday. The disciples around the stage hurriedly scrambled away, leaving only Su Yang and Yan Ming on the stage. Su Yang decided to leave this place first and ponder later. Before he jumped off the stage, the middle-aged man called Elder Sun looked at him and said, "What's your name?" Su Yang, he replied in a calm tone. Elder Sun nodded and no longer looked at him and directly went to pick up the unconscious Yan Ming to take him away. After leaving the stage, Su Yang searched through his memories and began walking towards his living quarters. Chapter 2 Suffering to find a single partner. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hey look. That's Su Yang, the idiot who decided to court senior apprentice. Sister Xing despite being aware of her partner. Didn't senior apprentice. Brother Yen have a death match with him today? What happened? Look at his robes, it's covered in blood. Does this mean that the death match has already been settled and that Su Yang won and Yan Ming is now dead? Impossible. He's only at the 3rd level of the elementary spirit realm whilst Yan Ming is at the 6th level of the elementary spirit realm. Such a wide gap, even I wouldn't dare to imagine winning, let alone that good. Nothing Su Yang. Then why is he still alive? When two enters the stage for a death match, they have to fight until one dies. I have never heard of both fighters surviving after a death match. Let's go ask him. The disciples spoke to each other as they watched Su Yang walk through the sect with a bloodied hole in his white robe with a calm expression, almost as if he was unaware of the grave injury on his chest. Hey, Su Yang, you bastard. How did you survive the death match against Yan Ming? A group of disciples blocked his path, halting his steps. The disciples' action quickly aroused the attention of those around them, and they became the center of attention. I do not have the time to play with kids, scram. Su Yang refused to give them another glance and walked around them, dumbfounding everybody there. Since when did the idiot become so daring and arrogant? To think he'd disregard the faces of so many disciples at once, did he finally go nuts? Su. Su Yang. Take one more step and you will pay. The one leading the group suddenly roared, startling everyone. However, despite his threatening words, Su Yang continued to walk, not even turning his head to look, completely ignoring them. "You fucking bastard." Veins appeared on the forehead of the disciple who shouted, and he chased after Su Yang with his fists tightly clenched. In the midst of taking his second step, Su Yang suddenly snapped his head to look at him with a narrowed gaze filled with killing intent. His horrifying gaze that seemed to be sharp enough to make a hole in a large boulder froze the disciple's movements and caused him to tremble uncontrollably, almost as if he was watching a hungry beast on the verge of pouncing towards him. Plop, the disciple's leg turned to tofu, and he fell to the ground. Even the disciples behind him began shaking their legs, looking like a crowd of clowns dancing in the cold. "Humph. A bunch of fools." Su Yang coldly snorted and continued walking. Was that, really Su Yang? Or did they mistake him as Su Yang? How could that possibly be Su Yang? Although they may look similar, that noble air that surrounded him was completely different than the useless Su Yang that I am familiar with. Right. Su Yang always has this idiotic expression on his face, but that handsome man just now had a sharp and serious face. They are two completely different people. The surrounding disciples began gossiping, some even laughing at the group that decided to stop him. Was that really not Su Yang? The disciple that had fallen to the ground thought to himself, feeling puzzled. Could there really be two people with nearly identical features in this sect? Su Yang's beastly gaze reappeared in the disciple's head, and he quickly dismissed his doubts. That was definitely not Su Yang but someone who looked like him. The idiotic Su Yang that he knows of would never dare talk back to others, let alone threaten them with that look. Upon reaching his living quarters within the outer court, Su Yang was greeted by another handsome young man in front of the door to his room. Su Yang. You actually managed to survive in a death match against Yan Ming. The young man had initially thought that he was looking at a ghost when he noticed Su Yang walking towards his place from a distance. But now that he was standing in front of him, there was no way that he could be a ghost. From the previous Su Yang's memories, Su Yang recognized this young man. He was his roommate, Tang Hu. "I am not feeling so well, so I will be resting in my room. Do not bother me." Su Yang walked into the house without giving him another word. Tang Hu watched him walk past him with his mouth wide open. "Good heavens," he mumbled out loud. "He really is alive." Su Yang directly went into his room after entering the house and began organizing his thoughts. That old man, what did he do, really? He looked into the mirror hanging on the wall, and memories of his childhood appeared in his head. This is clearly my own body when I was young, but how come I do not recall ever being in this place? Did I actually reincarnate and only regained my memories after getting stabbed in the chest by a sword? To get injured like that, I am really too weak the way I am right now. Su Yang is currently 16 years old, and he has been a disciple of this profound blossom sect for nearly a year. However, despite being in the sect for nearly an entire year, his cultivation has barely progressed, let alone a breakthrough. Outer court disciples like him who have only recently joined the sect would not receive any assistance from the sect and has to find a partner by themselves for dual cultivation, where two people of the opposite gender indulge in sexual intercourse for cultivation. Once he becomes an inner court disciple, then he may request the sect to find him a suitable partner. However, Su Yang has not been able to find a partner for himself since joining the sect despite his peak quality features. He was extremely handsome, no doubt, handsome enough to seduce the moon god's wife in his past life. Many female disciples, even the senior disciples, fought to be his partner at first, but when they found out that he had severe mental issues with zero talents, they quickly ignored him. No matter how handsome he was, in this sect where their growth depended on their partners, nobody was stupid enough to risk their future just because he was handsome, not to mention the countless other handsome young men and women in this sect. I have been gifted another life by that old man, but this kind of life. Su Yang loudly sighed. To think he, the most handsome man in the world in his past life, where countless peerless goddess and jade like fairies would stand in line just to be his partner, would be suffering to find a single partner in this sect with thousands of young maidens. If I am still in the same world, then there is a chance that they might still be living in this world. Su Yang's gaze flickered with a profound light as many peerless figures appeared in his mind. I will find them and have them in my embrace once again, and I will not let them go this time. However, before any of that, I must first fix this tarnished reputation of mine. Chapter 3 Waste of a Handsome Face. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Inside his room, Su Yang stripped and went into the bathroom that was connected to his room to clean the blood off his body. Still, that kid did a good one on me. How many years has it been since I last saw my own blood, let alone getting a hole opened in my chest? Su Yang was an immortal in his previous life, someone who was near the peak of cultivation. He had it all, beautiful women and power, something that was to be envious of. Now, however, he cannot even hold a candle against a mere mortal at the elementary spirit realm, not to mention the heavy injury. Of course, it was the previous Su Yang who had gotten into that situation, not the current Su Yang. However, Su Yang didn't use that as an excuse since he was in the same body, so he blamed it on himself. After cleaning the blood off his body, he smeared some medicine over the hole in his chest before wrapping some cloth around the injury and calling it a day. By the time Su Yang was done with treating his injury, the news of him beating Yan Ming on the stage in a death match had already spread around the outer court like wildfire. What? That good for nothing Su Yang who can't even use his thing down there properly defeated Yan Ming. Are you sure? I saw it with my very two eyes. After getting stabbed in the chest by Yan Ming, Su Yang suddenly roared, and everybody surrounding the stage suddenly puked up a mouthful of blood, and Yan Ming himself had fallen to the ground without any conscience. A mere shout had caused everybody to puke blood. What bull! I do not believe it. A3. I do not blame you. Even I had a hard time believing my eyes at the time. Such conversations were going on throughout the sect, and even Elder Sun who had stopped the fight could not help but recall the frightening pressure that suddenly enveloped the place. What happened between the two of you during the fight? Tell me everything. Elder Sun glared at Yan Ming who he had taken in for questioning. I don't know. Yan Ming said with a huge headache. All I can remember is stabbing that Su Yang in the chest before a sudden wave of killing intent overwhelmed me. Before stabbing him, it was like fighting an idiot who didn't even know how to swing a sword properly. After that, however, Yan Ming shivered when he recalled the expression on Su Yang's face after stabbing him. It was almost as if I was looking at another person after he received my sword. Elder Sun pondered the words Yan Ming spoke. The killing intent I felt coming from that boy was not something that could be created after getting stabbed once but something that can only be created with many near-death experiences and after killing many people. Who is that Su Yang, really? And how come I have never heard of him until today? Elder Sun looked at Yan Ming and said. You can leave now. Do not let me catch you on the stage without permission again. This disciple would not dare. After Yan Ming left the scene, Elder Sun began looking up information of Su Yang. But after just a few minutes of research, he was dumbstruck by the information he has received. From what he had gathered, Su Yang has been in this sect for nearly an entire year, yet there has been no progression with his cultivation since he joined because he was unsuccessful in finding a partner. Elder Sun couldn't believe how such a handsome man such as Su Yang would be unable to find a partner, so he dug a little bit deeper. What he found shocked him numb. To the point where he didn't know what to feel. Mental issues. Don't know how to use his thing down there properly. No talent. Are you sure about this? Elder Sun asked the person who was providing him the information, who happened to be another sect elder. You may not know about him since you rarely pay attention to the outer court, but almost everybody within the outer court knows Su Yang and his condition. The only reason he is still able to stay in this sect as a disciple is because the patriarch believes that he could still be of some use for the sect with his handsome face. A3. If he at least had a straight mind, then he would still have a chance in this world. Elder Sun sighed at the elder's words. Indeed, it was true that Su Yang had an incredibly handsome face even with the sect's high standards. But with the way he is, what waste of a handsome face. However, Elder Sun suddenly narrowed his eyes. He looked nothing like what you just told me when I saw him today. I don't know what else to tell you, Elder Sunday. That's all we know about him. The elder shrugged. I understand. Thank you for the information, Elder Mu. Right, how's your granddaughter holding up within the sect? Does she have a partner, yet? Elder Mu suddenly brought up his granddaughter who had recently joined the sect. When Elder Mu mentioned his granddaughter, the seriousness on Elder Sun disappeared, and he laughed. That girl is very picky, it'll be a long while before she finds somebody. Then, how about letting her meet my grandson, Mu Gong, one of these days? Elder Sun's lips twitched at Elder Mu's suggestion, but he kept his smile and said casually. One of these days. When he finally decided to leave his room, Su Yang was greeted by Tang Hu and another figure, a beautiful young lady. She was Meng Jia, Tang Hu's partner. How's your injury? Tang Hu asked him after noticing him. Just a bug bite. Bug bite, huh? Tang Hu chucked. Being roommates for nearly a year, he was able to feel that there was something different about the current Su Yang. The most obvious part was that he longer has that idiotic expression on his face and now looked more normal. Where are you going now? Just a stroll around the place, said Su Yang, who was already at the door, ready to leave. But your injury? Like I said, just a bug bite. After Su Yang left the place, Meng Jia said. He looks different today. You think so, too? How so? He's more handsome. Her words dumbfounded him. Meng Jia smiled at his expression and said. Don't worry. No matter how handsome he gets, you will be my only partner. That's not it. Tang Hu said with a blush. All right. Let's go cultivate. Meng Jia suddenly pulled Tang Hu to his room, where they would soon embrace each other with bare skin. Chapter 4 White Pearl Treasury. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Within the Profound Blossom sect exists one building that has everything from valuable resources to expensive treasures. Medicines, spirit stones, weapons, all that could be obtained at the White Pearl Treasury as long as one has enough premium points. Premium points are a kind of currency that only has value within the Profound Blossom sect. With premium points, one can exchange it for anything within the White Pearl Treasury. Premium points can be obtained through the sect by doing meritorious deeds for the sect, or by doing missions. They can also be traded with others like a real currency. How much premium points for this pure yang flower? Su Yang asked the elder behind the desk. He had decided to come to the White Pearl Treasury after realizing that he is currently too weak. But without a partner to cultivate with, the only way he'd be able to cultivate would be with resources obtained from the sect. And what better way to get resources than from the White Pearl Treasury, where all types of valuable resources could be found and purchased. Pure yang flower. Why does an outer court disciple like yourself want with such a valuable medicine? The old man looked at him with an intrigued expression. 10,000, 10,000. Yuan lifted his eyebrows with surprise. The most premium points someone can obtain in a mission should be 100, and those are the highest difficulties, yet you want 10,000 premium points for a mere pure yang flower. This is robbery in plain daylight. In his eyes, the pure yang flower is only a low-quality medicine used by mortals, yet they treat it as though it is some sort of godly medicine. The patriarch himself priced it. If you have any complaints, then you can go to him. Otherwise, the price is final. Su Yang glanced at the jade slip in his grasp and sighed. 34 premium points. After spending 1 year in this place. He looked around, and many beauties came into his view. I could just get a partner. But no matter how I look at it, they are all just brats that are still wet behind their ears. While Su Yang is currently inside the body of a 16-year-old young man, his mental age is anything but young. He just couldn't get himself to stick his rod into kids that are not even half his actual age. And while one's age does not matter when it comes to cultivators that can live thousands of years and remain looking young, it just didn't feel right to Su Yang. So, do you want it or not? The elder behind the desk said in an impatient tone despite already knowing the answer. He could guess that Su Yang did not have enough premium points just by his status as a mere outer court disciple. Forget about an outer court disciple such as him, even an inner court disciple would have a hard time obtaining 10,000 premium points. I want it. Su Yang's answer dumbfounded the elder. But not right now. In 10 days, I will return with enough premium points to exchange for it. You. How will you manage that? The elder asked with his eyes wide open. Su Yang only smiled at the elder's question and walked away without answering, which caused a few veins to appear on the elder's forehead. After leaving the White Pearl Treasury, Su Yang went to find a large piece of cloth and something to write on it. After that, he went to the training center, where it is populated with disciples all day and night, before standing there in the open with the piece of cloth, now a sign, spread for the whole world to see. Heavenly massage, experience what it feels like to be in heaven. First 3 customers free of charge. Heavenly massage. Isn't that Su Yang? What foolishness is he up to today? Experience heaven. Ha ha ha. He just wants to touch girls. Damn. This bastard is getting really desperate. The disciples there laughed without reserve. Su Yang stood there silently with a calm expression on his face as the place filled with laughter. This reminds me of my younger days. He reminisced the past when he used to stand in the streets all day and night with the exact same sign. After standing there for many hours straight without anybody approaching him, some disciples finally decided to speak with him for fun. Hey, Su Yang, what in the devil's name are you doing right now? We all know you just want to feel up some girls since you cannot find a partner. To think you'd come up with such a wicked plan, how shameless. However, despite the disciples disdaining, Su Yang continued to stand there with his eyes closed, seemingly asleep. Hey, listen when I am talking to you, you shameless bastard. Just as the disciple raised his fist, Su Yang opened his eyes, and within his gaze flashed a dangerous light. Stand aside, brat. I have a customer. Su Yang said, dumbfounding the disciples. When the disciples turned around, a beautiful young lady stood there with her arms crossed, her gaze seemingly filled with suspicion. What kind of massage? She asked in an aggressive tone, the kind that will make your back pain disappear. Su Yang's unexpected words caused the young lady to widen her eyes. How? How did you know? That I have back pain. Su Yang did not reply to her and only looked at his sign and smiled. Chapter 5 Pleading for more. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Are you saying that you can heal my back pain with this massage of yours? Su Yang calmly nodded at her question. Don't listen to him. He is only trying to take advantage of you. Yeah. Who knows what he'll do to you once to follow him? Do you have any idea who he is? The young lady looked at the group of disciples and frowned. And who are you? We are. Before the disciples can even introduce themselves, Su Yang spoke. I can heal you, but only if you follow my conditions. Conditions? Are you in the position to ask for conditions? I know that you have been standing here for many hours without a single customer. If I leave now, then who knows when your next customer may come. If it ever happens. Dot. After a moment of silence, Su Yang nodded and said calmly. Then. For having enough courage to stand before me, I shall part you with a gift. Your back pain. Don't underestimate it and go find a doctor to treat it quickly before you turn into a cripple. A cripple? What do you mean by that? The young lady began panicking after hearing his words, but that was not what Su Yang had intended. If you think that your back pain was caused by bad positioning during your cultivation, then you can't be more wrong. Then what was the cause? Dot. Dot. The young lady began sweating profusely after Su Yang became silent for more than a few seconds. I will do it. I will accept your conditions. The young lady gave up after a few more seconds of silence. Su Yang nodded and said. Condition 1, the session will only last for 10 minutes, no more, no less. Condition 2, you must share your experience after the massage with 10 people. Condition 3, you are only allowed to come back 1 month after your last massage session. If you refuse to any of these conditions, then you may turn around and walk away. If you fail to fulfill the second and third condition after the massage, then you can forget about coming back ever again. That's it. The young lady thought Su Yang had something far more serious in mind, but such easy conditions. Who wouldn't accept? PFT, 1 month. It'd be a miracle if you have another customer after her today. The disciples laughed. Do you accept? I accept. Good. Then follow me. Su Yang rolled up his sign and carried it on his back as he began leading the young lady back to his living quarters. Ah. She's really going to follow him. Should we stop her? Let her be. She can only blame herself later for trusting someone like Su Yang. The disciples watched as Su Yang and the young girl disappear into the distance. None of the dozens of people there tried to stop her because they are all intrigued in what will happen when she returns. This is your living quarters. We are doing it here. Then would you rather do it outside? Su Yang asked her with a slight smile. Dot. The young lady looked around with her imaginations running wild, causing her to blush. Su Yang didn't wait for her to answer and walked into the house. Ah. Wait up. After entering the dead silent house, Su Yang went straight into his room, and the young lady followed with caution. I swear to the heavens that if you do anything funny to me, you will pay for it with your life. You are too young to be my taste, little girl. Little girl. You look just about as old as me. Su Yang shrugged at her reply. Lay down on the bed with your back facing the ceiling. Dot. The young lady stood there silently, her gaze staring at him with intensively. You can keep your clothes on. After hearing his words, the young lady sighed in relief and laid herself on the bed. Su Yang cracked his knuckles and stretched around for a few moments before he said. Your 10 minutes begins now, try not to lose consciousness. What do you mean by, ah? The young lady suddenly let out an unexpected moan of pleasure that caused Su Yang's ears to tingle with delight. What did you just do, ah? Dot. Stop wiggling around like a worm, you're making this more difficult for me. Ah. The sense of pleasure on her back overwhelmed the young lady's sense of hearing, making her feel as though she was in another world, in heaven. She couldn't understand what she was feeling, but it was not a sense of feeling that could be made with the hands of a human, almost as though she was feeling the hands of a god. Time passed by quickly, but within the young lady's world, it felt almost like an eternity. And suddenly, the sense of pleasure ended. It was too sudden, almost feeling like it was the end of the world. Ha! Why did you stop? The young lady turned to look at Su Yang, and on her red face was a sensual expression, one that begged for more. Your 10 minutes is over. Su Yang said in a calm tone. But. The pain in your back should have subdued by now, but reduce the time you spend to cultivate her by half for the next month for it to be permanent. Please. 10. No, just 5 more minutes. I will pay you any amount. The young lady pleaded Su Yang to extend the service, but Su Yang only shook his head. I cannot accept anything from you as I have already stated that my first 3 customers will be free of charge. You can come back next month. After you spread your experience here to 10 people. The young lady bit her lips in frustration, reluctantly nodding a few seconds later. I look forward to your next visit. Ah. Zhou Xian. The young lady said. My name is Zhou Xian. I am called Su Yang. He smiled at her as he watched her exit the front door, her legs looking unstable as she walked, like a drunk walking home after spending a whole night drinking. Chapter 6 3 Season Snake. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. It felt otherworldly. Almost as though I was floating in the starry sky beside a river of stars. The way his hands touched my back. It was like his hands had melted and submerged itself into my back, reaching the deepest parts. It was a feeling to die for. I hate to admit it, but he made my body submit with his very hands. Zhou Xian spread her experience with Su Yang like a wildfire to all her friends like a kid who had just bought a new toy. In addition, she did not stop at just 10 people and spoke to all of her friends, hoping that her efforts would allow Su Yang to see her in a favorable light. Really? Could that Su Yang really have such talents? How is that possible? He's infamous for being useless and retarded. Even many sect elders have given up on him. I am serious. Go to him for his service and you'll instantly know whether my words are true or not. Despite not fully convincing everybody with her story about her experience with Su Yang's massage service, Zhou Xian was able to arouse the curiosity and interest in their hearts, enough to make them want to pay more attention to Su Yang, exactly what he wanted. Mere seconds after Zhou Xian left Su Yang's house, Tang Hu and his partner Meng Jia emerged from their own room, their face red and heart racing from cultivation. Su Yang. You're back. Tang Hu looked at him, who was standing by the door and looking outside with a slight smile. Su Yang turned to look at them and his smile widened. Congratulations on your breakthrough, he chuckled. His words startled the duo, and the redness on their faces deepened. Su Yang. Tang Hu scratched his head, looking like there was something on his mind. There is nothing to be embarrassed about. You are a man, and your woman is right beside you. Hold your head high with pride. Su Yang walked out of the living quarters after his sentence. The duo inside the house could only stare at his disappearing with a dazed face, their mind boggled by Su Yang's change in behavior. As I thought. He looks way more handsome than all the other times I have seen him before. Meng Jia said in her daze. Tang Hu recalled the Su Yang who couldn't even finish a sentence without stuttering inside his head. How could someone change so much in so little time? Did that injury startle his soul awake from some sort of slumber? After leaving, Su Yang went back to the training grounds and opened up his sign again. He intended to accept more than just 1 customer a day. That Su Yang is back already. He hasn't even been gone for an hour yet. Perhaps that girl had decided to change her mind, after all. What happened an hour ago repeated itself. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with Su Yang, so they only watched him from afar with suspicious gazes, like pedestrians watching a sketchy street performer. However, this time around, Su Yang didn't have to wait as long before someone approached him, a little girl who was limping. Are you the one who helped senior apprentice Sister Zhou relieve her back pain? Su Yang nodded in acknowledgement. Senior apprentice Sister Zhou said that your skills are real and seem to trust you. So. The little girl who seemed a few years younger than Zhou Xian fidgeted around as she tried to speak her mind. You want to know if I can help you with your left leg, correct? The little girl nodded vigorously. During the day, your left leg would be numb. At night, it would spasm constantly. How long since it started? 1 week ago. The little girl was amazed at how Su Yang saw through her issues with a mere glance. She felt as though there was nothing she could hide from his overwhelming gaze, like she was naked to the bones when standing before him. Can you heal me? Her eyes sparkled with hope when looking at him. The sect elders have tried, but none of them had the ability to help me. After a moment of silence, Su Yang started rolling up the sign. The 3 conditions. Are you aware of them? Yes. Do you accept? Yes. Then, follow me. The disciples there watched with wide mouths as Su Yang led the little girl away from the place. That creepy bastard Su Yang is going to take advantage of a girl as little as her. Shouldn't somebody stop them? It will be a good learning experience for her. Maybe she will think twice before trusting someone like Su Yang the next time she needs help. Just because we are fellow disciples does not mean we have to help each other. In this world where the strong devour the weak, being naive and inexperienced is not an excuse but a weakness. If one cannot overcome that weakness, they will only be devoured by the strong. The disciples there did not like the sight of a small girl getting taken advantage of, but none of them have any real reason to stop them either. In this sect, disciples are more like rivals to each other than friends. The fewer disciples there is to compete for the sect's resources, the better it would be for everybody else, so without any real benefits, nobody there was willing to risk themselves for a stranger. Su Yang directly led the little girl into his room after returning home. Fortunately, neither Tang Hu or Meng Jia were there to witness him bring home a little girl who looked no older than 13, or else there would have been a chaotic scene the moment he entered the front doors. The little girl did not stop fidgeting once since she approached Su Yang. No matter how much positive Zhou Xian had spoken of him to her, she was still not entirely comfortable to be here. Approaching a handsome young man such as Su Yang and entering his room where they'll be alone would be too much for anyone else, let alone a young girl like her who has only recently joined the sect. Your stockings, take them off. Su Yang said after closing the door, leaving them alone inside this sound-proof room. You were bitten by a colorful snake with red, yellow, and green scales around a month ago, right? How did? That snake is called a 3-season snake, and it lodges a deadly poison within its body that will slowly kill whatever it bites. Unlike other poison that takes at most minutes, even seconds to spread throughout the body, the 3-season snake's poison will take weeks before one would see any symptoms. Within the first month, the victims would lose the ability to use their legs, then the rest of their limbs within the second month. By the third month, the poison would have spread throughout their entire body, giving them a slow and painful death that could last up to 7 days. Su Yang's explanation caused the little girl to tremble in horror, her robes soaked in cold sweat. Such a terrifying poison would frighten even the coldest killers, let alone a small girl like her. Luckily, it has only been a month since you were bitten, so you are not in danger. Really? Really? Su Yang wiped the tears from her eyes and said in a confident tone. If I was only a mere massager, then I wouldn't be able to help you. But lucky for you, my hands can do more than just making others feel good. The little girl pulled off her white stockings, revealing her smooth and pale legs. You are? Su Yang suddenly asked. Yu, 12 years old. 12, and you are in this kind of sect. You mortals are really something else. Su Yang sighed despite already knowing that fact. He has not visited the mortal world for thousands of years in his past life, so he was unaware of their lifestyle. But looking and living in the mortal world now, he could not help but question the morality of those a part of this mortal world. Although I have been accepted into the sect, I am not allowed to participate in dual cultivation until I become an adult at the age of 16. Yu explained in a bashful tone after seeing the disappointment on Su Yang's face. That makes more sense. Su Yang said in a relieving tone. Alright, lay down on your stomach. I'll loosen up the muscles around your legs before I deal with the poison. Yu obediently laid on the bed and silently waited as Su Yang prepared himself. Then, Your 10 minutes starts now. His hands quickly grabbed her legs, causing a cute voice to escape her lips. Soon, the muscle in Chi Yu's legs loosened up, and the numbness began disappearing at a very noticeable rate. Chapter 7 Extracting the Poison. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. It took only 3 minutes for the muscle in Chi Yu's left leg to completely loosen up. Like tofu, the sensation of her skin was smooth and soft in Su Yang's hands. I will now begin to extract the poison. Su Yang showed her a needle as small as a strand of hair in his hands. The pleasant expression on Chi Yu's dazed face instantly froze at the sight of the needle. What are you going to sew with that? She asked with a horrified expression. Su Yang pointed at her left leg with a smile on his face. However, that handsome smile was more like the devil's grin in Chi Yu's eyes. Wait, is that really the only way? How else am I going to extract the poison? He replied to her question with another question. Close your eyes, you won't even feel it. Chi Yu hastily closed her eyes, but her body wouldn't stop trembling. Suddenly, a hand patted her head, giving her a sense of security and warmth, and her body stopped trembling. It was at this moment the needle between Su Yang's fingers flickered. A tiny hole that could not be seen with just the bare eyes opened up in Chi Yu's left thigh, and some sort of white smoke began escaping through that hole, creating a small cloud of mist above her legs. The moment the mist appeared, Su Yang moved his lips towards the hole on her thighs without hesitation and began sucking. Ah! Wah! The unexpected sucking sensation on her thighs caused Chi Yu to snap open her eyes. When she saw Su Yang's lips on her thigh, her face exploded with redness, nearly losing conscience from shock. However, despite his shameless and seemingly vulgar actions, Chi Yu did not kick him away and allowed him to continue. Her breathing quickened, and her eyes flickered with desire. Lust. Meanwhile, Su Yang was fully focused on extracting the poison through the tiny hole in her thigh. His robes were soaked in sweat, and his body burned from the poison he absorbed. Every part of his body was screaming in pain, and because of his low cultivation base, it only made it harder for him to subdue the poison within his body. Even if he wished, he simply wasn't in a position to enjoy the soft sensation on his lips. At this moment, the only thing that could be heard in this small and quiet room was Chi Yu's heavy breathing and low moans. A few minutes felt like a few hours for the two, one embraced by pleasure and one enduring pain. When only a few seconds of the 10 minutes were left, Su Yang finally released his lips. Su Yang coughed up a mouthful of black blood the moment his lips separated from Chi Yu's soft skin, his complexion turning ashen right after. Su Yang wiped the black blood from the corner of his lips and smiled. It's been a long time since I last sweated like this during a treatment. Su Yang collapsed on the bed beside Chi Yu right after his sentence, his conscience barely awake. Are you okay? Chi Yu cried out loud in alarm. Luckily, the poison had yet to spread to other areas and only occupied your left leg, so I was able to extract it without any problem. But being only at the 3rd level of elementary spirit realm, the process had drained my very limited profound chi quickly. I am only tired from exhausting my profound chi. Let me sleep for a bit and I will be fine. Don't forget the conditions. Su Yang fell asleep after those words, dumbfounding Chi Yu. She didn't know what to do, but since he said that he would be fine, she felt relieved. After taking a moment to organize herself, Chi Yu helped Su Yang by adjusting his awkward sleeping position and covered him with a blanket before quietly leaving. It was already the next morning by the time Su Yang woke up. He sat up and looked at the blanket covering him. How caring of her, he smiled. Although he had expected that it would be somewhat troublesome to heal Chi Yu, he did not expect that it would have been that challenging with his low cultivation base. I really need to increase my cultivation base. But before I obtain that pure spirit yang and cleanse the impurities within my body, I need to get used to this body and its insignificant cultivation base. Su Yang left the bed to take a quick shower. Afterward, he sat back on his bed in the lotus position. Deep within his mind, countless cultivation techniques he had learned from his previous life appeared one by one. Su Yang wasn't just a playboy in his previous life. He was also a cultivator and a doctor, so he has many resources at his disposal. Celestial Body Refining Scripture. One of the 7 heavenly sublime scripture obtained from the Heavenly Emperor's treasury. In his previous life, Su Yang wasn't able to cultivate this celestial body refining scripture because he had obtained it too late and had already refined his body. Not only did I steal his daughter's body and heart, but I also obtained his favorite cultivation technique. If the Heavenly Emperor is still alive, I should avoid him at all cost. He closed his eyes, and he began reciting the celestial body refining scripture within his head. Consume the universe, refine the body, achieve an immortal physique, the celestial body. The celestial body refining scripture was a technique that cultivated one's body, their physique, and one's cultivation. In order to achieve the celestial body, he must consume things with profound chi and refine it as his own, tempering his cultivation base and body simultaneously. There were 2 primary paths of training to become an immortal. The first was in chi refining profound chi. The majority of those who trained to become an immortal chose this path. This path allowed one to use many powerful techniques, control gravity, soar in the sky, and even change the weather. In other words, it was a profound and glamorous path. The other path was in body refining one's physical body. It is said that body refining is at least a few dozen times more difficult than chi refining, where one has to endure unimaginable pain and torture their own body until it breaks for little result. However, enduring such a torture would allow them to move mountains with bare hands, change terrains, even poke holes in stars with mere fingers. Ordinarily, one would choose either chi refining or body refining, never both due to the unimaginable amount of time it would consume to train in both. The celestial body refining scripture, however, allowed one to cultivate in both chi refining and body refining sententiously, a heaven-defying technique. Suddenly, Su Yang's body began turning red, looking as though he was being roasted in a fire. His body temperature reached nearly 150 Celsius within minutes, and a burning smell began emitting from underneath him. He was burning the bed with his body temperature alone. Su Yang was using the 3-season snake's poison he had contained within his body to temper his body, something he had decided to do after seeing Chi Yu. Even if he does not have a partner for dual cultivations, there are many other ways to cultivate. While it is not as pleasurable as dual cultivation where he can enjoy the embrace of another, this method of cultivation is still exercised upon by the majority of the world and is even more beneficial than dual cultivation in most scenarios. After half an hour, a refreshing feeling suddenly exploded inside Su Yang's body, cooling his burning body. He had a breakthrough, reaching the 4th level of elementary spirit realm in cultivation and the early stage of elementary spirit body refiner simultaneously. Chapter 8 This is why you are still single. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Immediately after washing himself, Su Yang traveled back to the training grounds where many disciples had started their training long ago. That Su Yang is back. He's really persistent with this scheme of his. What happened with those 2 who dared to follow him? Have they reported him yet? Haven't you heard? Not only were those 2 extremely satisfied, but they are also helping him by spreading high praises of his services. What? For them to act like loyal dogs trying to impress their master, what on earth did Su Yang do to them? Who knows, but when I saw Zhou Xian last night, her face was full of smiles. She looked as though she was recently reborn. Hey, look over there. That's. This disciple greets Elder Lan. The disciples greeted the beautiful woman approaching them from a distance, and walking beside her was a cute little girl with smooth skin that made her face much brighter. Senior apprentice. Brother Su. It was Chi Yu, and she approached him with a bright smile on her face. With the way you are running, I can assume that your legs have already healed, right? Chi Yu nodded. Yes. Thanks to senior apprentice. Brother Su and his wonderful treatment, the pain did not appear last night, and I was able to sleep peacefully for the first time in a long time. That's good to hear. Su Yang showed her a gentle smile filled with care, causing Chi Yu to blush. He. The image of Su Yang sucking her thighs yesterday abruptly appeared in Chi Yu's mind. Even the sensation of his lips could be recalled very clearly, almost like it was engraved deeply within her heart. You are the one who treated her yesterday. The beautiful woman who looked to be in her 20s asked the moment she arrived in front of them. Yes. The beautiful woman, who was addressed as Elder Lan by the disciples, frowned at his calm demeanor. Su Yang, 16 years old. You have been in the sect for nearly an entire year as an outer court disciple, yet you still have no partner. Not to mention all the rumors about you being a retard and a good. Nothing. How did you do it? This brat wouldn't tell me how you treated her no matter how much I asked. Su Yang glanced at Chi Yu, who became flustered after hearing Elder Lan's question, and smiled. I apologize in advance, but that is privacy between my customer and me. I am not allowed to share such information with strangers. What did you just say? Elder Lan's facial expression darkened. Do I need to remind you who you are speaking to? I am Elder Lan, the head elder of the health department for the outer court. All the injured or sick disciples within the outer court are under my administration, meaning that she is also under my care. And Su Yang's calm demeanor remained the same despite her threatening gaze that seemed to want to swallow him whole, and he continued. What does that have anything to do with me? Why you, an arrogant brat who doesn't know how to respect his seniors? Sister Lan. Stop. Chi Yu's startled cry halted Elder Lan's movement, who was seconds away from slapping Su Yang in the face without restraint. Elder Lan suppressed the anger in her stomach and took a deep breath. Chi Yu, are you sure that a stinking brat like him had healed your leg when even a seasoned doctor such as myself couldn't tell what was wrong with you? Su Yang chucked when Elder Lan addressed herself as a seasoned doctor, which caused her glare at him. She had a feeling that he was laughing at her. Sister Lan, we didn't come here today to offend senior apprentice. Brother Su. We came here for his help. Chi Yu said to her in a worried tone, sounding like an elder sister. Elder Lan snorted coldly. What can a brat who isn't even half my age like him do? There is nothing an arrogant brat like him can do to help me. You are absolutely right. There is nothing I can do to help you relieve the sharp pain in your buttocks when sitting down. Go find someone else who is more experienced, someone at least twice your age. Elder Lan's eyebrows twitched uncontrollably at Su Yang's sarcastic words. See. Senior apprentice. Brother Su is the real deal. He was able to tell that you are hurt with a single glance. You have to allow him to help you. Chi Yu's innocent words were like sharp swords stabbing Elder Lan's heart. Although she didn't want to admit it, Su Yang's insight definitely surprised her in more than one way. Even if she believes in you, I will never trust you. Let's go, Chi Yu. Elder Lan turned around and dragged Chi Yu away with her. The disciples there wondered what their relationship was. They looked like sisters, but everybody there was well aware that Elder Lan has no siblings. Sister Lan. You have been in great pain for the past few days because of your injury, even missing out on your daily cultivation. If this goes on, don't worry about me, Chi Yu. I will find a way to treat myself without the help of that Su Yang. He is only an outer court disciple whilst I am a sect elder, after all. I will lose all face if I lower myself and ask him for help. Chi Yu sighed at her stubbornness. She has known Elder Lan since she was a baby because their families had connections with each other. Although they are not real sisters, they treat each other as though they are siblings. Sister Lan. This is why you are still single. You are too prideful, and you are already 40 years old. At this rate, you will die as a single woman. Chi Yu's words nearly caused Elder Lon to cough up a mouthful of blood. You little brat. You are still too young to have a partner, let alone talk about mine. I'll have you address me as Elder Lon for the rest of the week. Eh? But. No buts. I am Elder Lon to you for the rest of the week. Chi Yu sighed. She turned her head to look at Su Yang, who was still standing there quietly and calmly. Senior apprentice. Brother Su, her face reddened at the sight of his face. Chapter 9 Wetting the Bed. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Su Yang stood inside the training ground until the sun had set without receiving a single customer, yet he refused to leave and continued to stand there like a stone statue. The disciples there were surprised to see such a patient character, and those who weren't aware of his identity were charmed by his noble presence. It felt as though they were being protected by a guardian spirit. Time passed quickly, and soon, the night sky appeared. Yet, there still hasn't been a single customer that approached him. However, despite getting 0 customers after an entire day, Su Yang didn't panic, nor was he worried. Instead, he kept his confidence and remained his calm face, from morning to night. Such patience caused many to secretly admire him, wishing that they could have the same thing when it came to training themselves. After some time, Su Yang finally moved. He tilted his head and looked at the night sky, but all he saw inside his head was an image of Elder Lan's round buttocks. 2. No, 1 day at most, huh? Su Yang mumbled. He then began rolling up the sign and prepared to go back home for the day. After sending Chi Yu back to her living quarters, Elder Lon directly went back to her own. Inside, she laid on her bed with her back facing the ceiling. Since she cannot sit because of the abnormal pain in her buttocks, her cultivation came to a halt since a few days ago. This really sucks, she sighed underneath her pillow. The pain had started last week without any notice and has been increasing at a fast rate since then. Unable to sit without crying, she could only stand or lay on the bed. At this rate, I wouldn't be able to walk without bearing any pain. I need to get this treated as soon as possible. Suddenly, the image of Su Yang and his handsome face appeared in her head, and that made her feel irritated. Why did that rude brat come into mind? She wanted to ignore him, but the fact that Chi Yu's leg had been treated by him wouldn't change no matter what. How did he do it? I wasn't even able to see the problem with my 10 years of experience, yet he healed her in a single night, and seemingly flawlessly, too. Ah! That little brat Chi Yu. Why won't she tell me anything? Am I not trustworthy in her eyes? The more she thought about the situation between Su Yang and Chi Yu, the angrier she got. Suddenly, in the midst of her thoughts, an excruciating sharp pain that caused her to cry out loud attacked her buttocks. The pain was akin to having a sharp sword stab her in the rear over and over again, nearly causing her to lose consciousness. In her 40 years of life, she has never experienced anything near as painful as currently. Furthermore, the pain did not cease and only continued to grow stronger. And within minutes, she lost consciousness, her body soaked in sweat. When she woke up, it was already morning, and her robes were still wet. The bed sheets were also soaking wet, but it wasn't her sweating that had soaked them but something else entirely different. The thought of her wetting the bed as a 40-year-old grown woman caused her head to explode in redness. Luckily, she lived alone by herself. If someone had seen her wet the bed at her age, then she would surely lose all faith and her desire to live. It was at this point after she had wet the bed that she realized the help she needed. If this continued, then who knows what might happen tomorrow, let alone a week from now. Just thinking about it caused her to tremble violently. But where do I get help? Who can help me? Elder Lon pondered, but to no avail. She could be considered one of the best doctors within the sect, yet she couldn't even heal herself. Suddenly, an image of Chi Yu smiling appeared in her head, and standing casually beside her was a handsome young man with a calm expression, one that made others feel confident when in his presence. Su Yang. Elder Lon quickly cleaned herself before rushing towards the training ground. When she arrived, however, neither Su Yang or his poorly made sign was anywhere to be seen. She then went to Chi Yu's living quarters. Chi Yu, wake up. Elder Lon directly opened the door to Chi Yu's living quarters with a spare key that had been given to her by Chi Yu for emergencies. Sister Lon. Chi Yu rubbed her eyes tiredly, puzzled as to why Elder Lon would be there. Su Yang. Where does he live? I need to see him right this moment. Senior apprentice. Brother Su. Chi Yu has never seen her sister Lon so panicked before, so she also began panicking. What did senior apprentice. Brother Su do? Is he in trouble? No. I need to see whether or not he can treat my injury. Elder Lon forcefully squeezed the reason she needed to see him out of her mouth through her embarrassment. Chi Yu looked at her dumbfoundedly for a moment, and her eyes suddenly began sparkling. Sister Lon requires senior apprentice. Brother Su's treatment, right? I'll bring you to his living quarters right away. Chi Yu said in a happy sounding voice as she jumped off the bed. Elder Lon nodded, yet there was still a shred of doubt in her heart. Could a mere outer court disciple like Su Yang really treat her injury? She was still hesitant, but the urgency in her heart overwhelmed her uncertainty. She wouldn't be able to endure pain she felt last night or waking up to herself wetting the bed for a second time, after all. Chapter 10 Beauty Waiting by the Door. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Elder Lon banged on the doors to Su Yang's living quarters, but the person who came out to greet them a moment later was Tang Hu, Su Yang's roommate. Elder Lon. He looked more terrified than surprised to see a sect elder banging at his door. Did he do something that had managed to offend this elder? This disciple greets, bring disciple Su Yang out here. Elder Lon interrupted. Su Yang. He left some time ago. What? Where did he go? Elder Lon frowned. Don't tell me he went to the training ground while I went to get Chi Yu, she thought. He didn't tell me where he'd go. Sis, Elder Lon, perhaps senior apprentice. Brother Su went to the training ground like usual. You, tell Su Yang, when he comes back, that I am looking for him with urgent matters that cannot be delayed. Elder Lon then stormed off to the training grounds again, leaving Tang Hu dumbfounded and wondering what on earth Su Yang did to offend a respected sect elder such as Elder Lon. Elder Lon and Chi Yu went straight to the training grounds in hopes to see a handsome young man standing beside his poor-looking sign, but alas, he was nowhere to be seen. This disciple greets Elder Lon. Have any of you seen a disciple named Su Yang? The one who usually stands there like an idiot. Elder Lon asked the disciples training there, but all of them shook their heads. Where is that kid? Chi Yu, go ask around and see if anyone has seen Su Yang. If you cannot find him within the hour, come back here and meet with me. If you find him, then bring him here. If I do not come back after an hour, then I should have already found him. Okay. Elder Lon then looked at the disciples there and said. If any of you see disciple Su Yang, tell him that Elder Lon is looking for him. If you can find him for me, then I will award you with 100 premium points. 100 premium points. That's as much as a high-risk mission would award. The disciples there became excited from the mission given to them by Elder Lon. Someone as handsome as Su Yang must be an easy sighting, right? And the fact that almost all outer court disciple knows his face only makes this mission easier. The disciples scrambled out of the training grounds as though there was an ongoing fire. And for the first time since the sect's opening, the training ground looked deserted. Somewhere in the outer court, Su Yang was casually flipping through pages for a book. Sitting beside him are books and scrolls that piled all the way above his head. He was in the library, where hundreds of records and even cultivation techniques were gathered. This library, the Profound Library, is a place that rents out its resources to its disciples and elders alike. Whether it'd be an ancient record about myths and legends or a scroll containing a profound cultivation technique, they have it all. Su Yang was trying to learn more about this world that he was mysteriously thrown into. However, in this mortal world, there was little to no information on the places he knew. The moon god's palace, the heavenly temple, even the land of gods that everybody and their mother in his previous life knew are unknown in this world or remain as mere legends and myths. Am I really in the same world, or was I reincarnated into a foreign world? One that I have no knowledge of. Su Yang placed the book down and sighed, his gaze filled with doubt. But there are also many things here that I am familiar with, such as the pure young flower. Even the cultivation stages here are the same. In his previous life, Su Yang traveled not just his own world, but all four worlds that shared the same universe. If he was thrown into any of these four worlds, he should know right away, yet he doesn't have the slightest clue as to where he is currently. This is clearly the mortal world, but what is this eastern continent? How long has it been since I left the eternal retribution cliff? Countless questions that have no answers appeared in his mind. After glancing through a few more scrolls, Su Yang came to a conclusion. If he does not leave this sect and learn more about this world, then he will surely never see those he loves again. However, it was still early for him to leave. Mainly because he is currently too weak. With his cultivation base, he can forget about surviving the wilderness, let alone find his lovers that are scattered across the starry sky. At his current stage, any expert within the cultivation world could easily crush him with a single finger, so he could only stay holed up in this sect until he has a sufficient cultivation base that would allow him to travel without too much danger. Su Yang took a deep breath, and he looked at the beauties that walked in and out of the library. The moment I obtain the pure young flower, that is when I will truly begin cultivating. His gaze flickered with a profound light. Su Yang stayed in the corner of the library until the sunset arrived, and he finally decided to leave. After tidying up the place, Su Yang left the library and went back to his living quarters, where a mature woman stood in front of his door with an irritated expression on her face. The moment the mature woman saw Su Yang, her eyes widened. Su Yang. Where have you been all day? Do you have any idea how long I have been waiting here for you? A mere disciple like you dare to make a sect elder like me wait all day in front of your door. Do you have any idea how much face I have lost today because of you? Su Yang smiled at the sight of Elder Lon fuming with anger, something he found somewhat cute and charming. Greetings, Elder Lon. What business does a respectful sect elder such as yourself have with me, a mere outer court disciple? He greeted her with a bow. Humph, talking outside would be inappropriate, let us talk inside. Very well. Su Yang approached the door calmly, keeping a smile on his face.